Okay, so we will be filming our annotations of Act 1, Scene 2 in Portia's house, where Portia is seen for the first time with Nerissa, and they talk about Portia's dead father's casket system and how it's pretty much ruining Portia's life. Alright, so Portia's whining about how her father's making her marry people that she doesn't want to marry. And then she starts talking about how her will of a living daughter is curbed by the will of her dead father, and it shows Portia struggling with the fact that even though her father's dead, he's still controlling her, and even if he wasn't really controlling her, she wouldn't have much right anyway to choose who she married, because that's how it was back then. Women didn't choose their husbands, society or the father did, or the family. And then Portia asks Nerissa to list everyone, all the suitors who came to her palace asking for her hand, and she'll rate them according to her affection for them. And first there's the Neapolitan prince, and yeah, she starts talking about how he does nothing but talk about his horse, and does nothing but he just cares about work more than anything else. And then she speculates that she kind of jokes about how his mother probably played false with the smith, which means the smith was his father. And then she complains about the County Palatine and says she would rather be married to a death's head with a bone in his mouth than to either of these, suitors that Nerissa has listed, which is kind of harsh. And this again shows her resentment toward her father's system of picking a suitor for her. And then Nerissa asks about the French lord, and she insults him too because she just doesn't like anybody, and then Nerissa just keeps listing people that have come to the palace, and Portia keeps shooting them down because she hates them all and she'd rather die than marry them. Duke of Saxony's drunk all the time, and it says he's very wily, it's German, in the morning when he's sober, and most wild in the afternoon when he's drunk. So at best he's a little worse than a man, and at his worst he's a little better than a beast, and that's harsh but kind of true. And then Nerissa asks if she's going to go along with the casket system, and she said that she has to because that's the rule. And then Nerissa's just trying to comfort her. Don't talk. Okay, and Sibylla was the queen of Jerusalem in around the year 1100-ish, and she lived for a long time compared to how long people usually lived back then. And then Diana is the Roman form of Artemis, I think, and she is the goddess of the hunt and etc., but she also pledged never to marry ever and not to associate with any men, so that's what she's talking about. Anyway, we're at the end, and that's the end of this section, or this scene, because Portia and Nerissa had their little discussion, and it basically just portrayed or illustrated how society worked back then, which was basically women had no control over who they married, and usually family members, especially fathers, controlled it. But this is especially weird because her father is dead, and even though he's dead, his grip on her future is still really strong, and he determines exactly what happens to her, and she feels oppressed, especially with her special kind of intelligence and spirit and daring, because in the future, in the play, she dresses up as a man. Okay, so basically this passage just was one long description of how the culture was back then in their society, where women had little to no power and men dictated everything. In the early passage of the play, we just get a really good understanding of what life is like of what life was like back then, and why Portia is so how she is. The end.